Who bruises the bloom, let them go. Let God sweep your porch clean. Every goodbye echoes grace. You are not unloved, you are being lifted. What leaves you was never your light. Walk on. The sky is waiting. When people walk out of your life, it often feels like a storm has arrived unannounced, scattering your comfort, shaking your plans, and tearing at your peace. You ask yourself why they left, why it hurt, and why it always feels like something is missing. But time, in its infinite patience, teaches us that not all losses are tragedies. Some are blessings wrapped in heartbreak. There are moments in life when detachment, no matter how painful, is divine. Divine detachment is not the cold severance of ties. It is the warm whisper of protection. It is the unseen hand of grace plucking away what is misaligned with your spirit. Some people are not meant to walk the full length of your journey. They arrive with lessons, not lifelong love. Their presence may have felt sweet, but their absence is sacred. You didn't lose them. You were liberated from what was never truly aligned with your soul. When the wrong people remain, they clutter your spirit. They speak to your doubts and feed your fears. They pull you away from your center. They may not be cruel with their words, but their energy chips away at your peace. And peace, darling, is not something you trade for companionship. Peace is the prize. Peace is the sign of alignment with the divine. We hold on to people for reasons rooted in fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of losing love, even if it was a love laced with anxiety, inconsistency, or control. But divine detachment steps in when you can't let go on your own. It unravels what you were too loyal to release. It unthreads the ties you called commitment, but were really captivity. It is God stepping in quietly, firmly, with mercy disguised as disruption. You may not understand why it ended. You may replay the memories, searching for clues, trying to stitch back what came undone. But the truth is, not every ending is for your understanding. Some are for your elevation. You are being freed, not forsaken. You are being shielded from the harm you didn't even see. Your spirit was whispering, but you ignored it. Your body was tired, your heart uneasy, and still you stayed. So divine detachment did what you wouldn't. It moved what you feared to lose. When someone is wrong for you, the signs often arrive in silence, in the form of growing distance, uneasy sleep, or a soul that sighs more than it sings. But we rationalize, minimize, and glorify the idea of endurance. We confuse loyalty with self-betrayal. Divine detachment calls us back to truth. It reclaims you. It does not wait for your approval. It waits for your surrender. You must know that every removal is not punishment. It's not rejection. It's not abandonment. It's preservation. Sometimes the people we love carry poison in their presence, not because they are evil, but because their path no longer matches ours. Staying connected becomes an act of resistance against the divine, and nothing that resists the divine will ever bring peace. You may cry, you may ache, you may feel lost, but what you feel is not the loss of love, it is the detox of misalignment. Healing comes in waves, and clarity follows behind. One day you will look back and bless the absence. You will see that you were saved, not shattered. You will rise from that quiet grief and feel lighter. Your heart will no longer brace for the chaos it once called comfort. There is a deep mercy in being removed from what drains you. In the beginning, it doesn't feel like mercy, it feels like pain. But trust that divine detachment sees further than you can. It moves for your future. It clears the path so that joy can come without needing to fight for room. You will not have to beg to be understood, to be seen, to be respected. What's meant for you will never require you to shrink. Let the wrong people go. Let the absence teach you what presence should feel like. The divine is not trying to harm you. It is protecting you, not from people, but from staying small, from staying in relationships that clip your wings, from settling for love that does not speak your name with reverence. Sometimes the kindest thing God can do is remove what you were never meant to keep. That's not cruelty. That's care. That's not loss. That's liberation. Divine detachment is not the end of love. It is the beginning of sacred alignment. There comes a moment in every life when goodbye arrives, like a guest you never invited. It does not knock. It does not ask if you're ready. It simply enters, unpacks sorrow, and sits at the center of your chest. The pain of letting go, of being left, or of walking away can feel like a kind of death. The death of dreams, of comfort, of shared plans and familiar voices. And yet, within that ache lies a mystery many do not recognize until much later, that painful goodbyes are often sacred beginnings. We tend to believe that endings mean something went wrong, that if we had loved better, fought harder, or prayed longer, the story could have continued. But some chapters must end, not because they lacked value, but because their purpose was fulfilled. Some people come into our lives like bridges, meant to carry us over something, trauma, loneliness, fear. And once we cross, we're not meant to build a house on the other side. We're meant to keep moving. When we refuse, the universe intervenes, sometimes through discomfort, sometimes through heartbreak, always through purpose. A goodbye can feel like a cruel theft, especially when it arrives wrapped in betrayal, confusion, or silence. The silence of someone who once knew your every secret. The distance from someone who once promised forever. But endings have a sacred language. They speak in riddles only time can unravel. What you call a loss today may later reveal itself as a redirection, a protection, even a divine mercy. You didn't lose your way. You were being led to something more honest, more whole. In the quiet aftermath of a painful goodbye, something begins to stir beneath the sorrow, a deeper awareness, a confrontation with parts of yourself you once buried beneath companionship. Who are you without them? What dreams were you delaying? What pain were you tolerating in the name of love or loyalty? These are the sacred questions born from brokenness. They do not arrive with soft voices. They come like a reckoning, but they also carry the seeds of renewal. You begin to hear yourself again. You begin to sit with the silence, and eventually it does not scream, it sings. The noise of a mismatched relationship, the anxiety of walking on emotional eggshells, the ache of unmet needs, those sounds begin to fade. And in their place, a stillness rises. That stillness is where the sacred beginning takes root. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't erase the pain overnight, but it anchors you. It whispers, "You are not broken, you are becoming." The pain of goodbye does not mean love was wasted. It means you dared to open your heart. You dared to hope. You dared to try. That is never weakness. That is your humanity. But sacred beginnings are not always born in joy. Sometimes they are born in surrender. In the moment you stop trying to make something fit that has outlived its season. In the moment you realize that your soul cannot expand while trying to hold on to what keeps you small. You are not meant to beg for what's meant for you. You are not meant to convince someone to stay who cannot see your worth. Painful goodbyes strip away illusions. They reveal the truth beneath the surface. The truth about the other person, yes, but also about yourself. What you've been avoiding, what you truly need, what you deserve. It is in that sacred unveiling that rebirth begins. Grief will come in waves. Some days will feel like healing, others like breaking all over again. But trust this. No soul leaves your life without shaping you. Every wound has wisdom. Every ending has a lesson. The sacred beginning may not look like joy at first. It may look like solitude, uncertainty, or long, quiet nights. But that solitude is fertile. That uncertainty is honest. That quiet is holy. One day, you'll look back on the goodbye that shattered you and bless it. Not because the pain didn't matter, but because it mattered enough to change you, to wake you, to clear the space for something truer. You'll see that goodbye was not an ending at all. It was the beginning of your return to yourself, to your worth, to your light. And that, beloved, is sacred. There is a knowing within you that speaks long before your mind has the courage to listen. It is subtle, like a whisper you almost ignore. It rises in the pit of your stomach, the tension in your chest, the way your breath shortens when something isn't quite right. This is your spirit speaking, not with fear or logic, but with truth. Your spirit always knows before you do. It knows when a person's smile is hiding something hollow. It knows when the room you walk into is heavy with energy that doesn't match your own. It knows when a decision that looks perfect on paper will lead to emptiness in practice. Your spirit doesn't argue. It doesn't shout. It simply waits for you to trust it. We are taught to value reason above intuition, to make choices based on evidence, expectations, and appearances. We stay in places that suffocate us because they make sense to others. We silence our instincts out of politeness or fear of judgment. But your spirit does not bend to logic. It bends to alignment. And when something is out of alignment, your spirit tightens. It pulls away. It grows restless, not to punish you, but to protect you. There were times you felt tired in someone's presence and called it love. Times you ignored the tightness in your chest and called it stress. Times you stayed in a job, a friendship, a relationship, even though your inner voice had already begun to whisper, "This is not it." You knew, maybe not with words, but you knew. That discomfort was direction. Your spirit has a language of its own. It speaks in unease, in repeated dreams, in the way your body reacts when someone enters the room. You start losing sleep. You feel exhausted after conversations that used to bring joy. Your laugh becomes quieter, less frequent, less true. These are the signs, not of weakness, but of wisdom. And when you stop to listen, really listen, you realize you've always known. You may not want to admit it because admitting it would mean change, would mean letting go of someone you thought you'd love forever, would mean walking away from what you built, even if what you built has become a cage. But the truth is, your spirit doesn't want you to live a life that just looks good. It wants you to live a life that feels good, and it will keep nudging you, gently at first, more loudly over time, until you finally choose yourself. Every time you ignored your spirit, you paid for it in pieces of yourself. You grew anxious, you second-guessed, you tolerated what was slowly undoing you, but the moment you listened, something shifted. Maybe not everything around you, but everything within you. That peace wasn't a coincidence. That clarity wasn't random. It was your spirit finally being heard. You don't need 1,000 reasons to walk away when something doesn't feel right. You only need one. Your spirit says so. That's enough. You're not overreacting. You're not being dramatic. You're not too sensitive. You're tuned in. That's not weakness. That's power. That's presence. That's connection to something greater than fear, greater than people's opinions, greater than what looks safe. Your spirit sees what your eyes haven't yet caught. It feels what your heart is still denying. It knows when something is stealing your light, and it never misleads you, even when the truth hurts, even when the path it pushes you toward is harder. It is always guiding you toward what you were born for, toward wholeness, toward peace, toward alignment. You are not lost. You are learning to hear again, to hear what was always there beneath the noise, beneath the pressure, beneath the masks you wear to survive. Your spirit does not speak in panic. It speaks in truth, in deep, unwavering truth. And when you begin to trust it, life begins to shift. Not because it gets easier, but because it gets real. You don't need to wait for proof. You don't need someone else to validate what you feel. You already know. You've always known. The body remembers. The soul recognizes. And your spirit, wise and patient, will never stop speaking. The question is not whether it's speaking. The question is whether you will finally listen. Rejection is a wound at first. It stings, slices through your sense of worth, and makes you question what you lacked, what you could have done better, how you could have convinced someone or something to choose you. Rejection is a door slammed shut when you were hoping it would open wide. It's a voice saying no when your whole heart was saying yes. But with time, with distance, and with courage, rejection reveals itself not as a curse, but as redirection. When you are rejected, it is not because you are unworthy, but because what you were reaching for was not in alignment with your growth. We often chase things with our ego, jobs that make us look successful, people who give us fleeting validation, dreams that were never truly our own. We chase them because we've been taught that achievement equals acceptance, and acceptance equals love. But not every yes would have been a blessing. Some would have been a distraction. Some would have taken you further from yourself. Rejection doesn't mean you are not enough. It often means you are too much for a place, a person, a path not meant to hold your light. You were made to expand, to evolve, to rise. And sometimes the only way to be redirected is to be removed. The very thing you think you lost might have been the weight keeping you grounded in a space too small for your spirit. There is a kind of grace in not getting what you thought you wanted, a kind of mercy in being denied, because sometimes if you had been given that opportunity, you would have shrunk to fit it. You would have molded yourself to meet its requirements. You would have changed just enough to be accepted, but far too much to remain authentic. That is not alignment. That is abandonment of self. And rejection saves you from that sacrifice. You won't always see it in the moment. At first, all you can feel is the absence, the silence, the way everything you hoped for didn't happen. But pain has layers. And once the initial shock fades, something else begins to surface. Clarity, strength, vision. You start to ask different questions. Instead of, why didn't they choose me? You begin to ask, why was I choosing them? Instead of, what's wrong with me? You ask, what did I overlook in myself? These questions do not come from bitterness. They come from awakening. Rejection strips you down to something raw and honest. It forces you to let go of illusions. You stop pretending. You stop performing. You meet yourself, not as the world sees you, but as you truly are. That self, strong, intuitive, worthy, is the one you must return to. And often, rejection is the path back home. Think of the times you begged for someone to stay, only to realize later their presence was never peace. Think of the doors that closed, only for new ones to open with ease. Think of how the universe rerouted you from heartbreak, from burnout, from betrayal. Even when you thought you were being broken, you were being rebuilt. Redirection isn't passive. It's powerful. It's not the universe deciding for you. It's the universe protecting you while preparing you. It's a nudge toward the unknown where your next blessing lives. The truth is, if everything had gone the way you wanted, you wouldn't be who you are today. That strength you carry, born from rejection, that clarity in your vision, sharpened through disappointment, that fire in your soul, lit every time you were told no and rose anyway. Rejection is a sacred detour. It is grace disguised as grief. It is a shift, not a stop. And when you stop chasing what denied you, you begin attracting what is meant for you, what's real, what's lasting, what sees you fully and doesn't flinch, what welcomes you without asking you to shrink. So let the no be your compass. Let the closed door be a sign, not that you're lost, but that you're being led towards something higher, truer, more whole, something that matches the magnitude of who you are becoming. You are not off course. You are simply being rerouted to what your spirit was always meant to reach. And when you arrive, you'll know the rejection wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything real. Chaos is loud. It comes in like a storm, unpredictable, overwhelming, and often uninvited. It turns your life upside down, leaving you gasping for stability, desperate for answers, unsure of what to hold on to when everything feels like it's slipping through your fingers. Chaos doesn't ask for permission. It shakes the ground beneath you, takes what you thought was certain, and reminds you that nothing is guaranteed. Not people, not plans, not even the version of yourself you once relied on. But in the aftermath, when the noise begins to fade, something begins to rise. Clarity. We rarely recognize clarity in the middle of the storm. While we're breaking, losing, unraveling, all we can feel is the confusion. The questions echo louder than any answers. Why did this happen? What now? Who am I without what I lost? But chaos is not the end. It is the clearing. It is the fire that burns away what is no longer serving you, the quake that dislodges foundations built on fear, illusion, or control. When everything falls apart, what remains is real. And what's real is where clarity begins. Sometimes chaos enters not because you did something wrong, but because life is making space for something right. You outgrew the version of yourself that tolerated too much, stayed too quiet, accepted less than you deserved. You were becoming someone new, but clinging to the old. Chaos arrived not to punish you, but to release you. It doesn't always look like a gift, but it often is. When comfort becomes a cage, chaos breaks the lock. In the stillness that follows, you begin to see the people you thought you needed were draining you. The path you swore was your purpose was built on someone else's dreams. The love you once chased wasn't love, it was attachment. These truths are harsh, but they're holy. You don't get to clarity without confrontation. You must face what you've avoided, sit with what you feared, let the discomfort guide you deeper into yourself. Clarity doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in pieces, soft and sure. In the moment you breathe deeper, in the way your body no longer tenses at their name, in the shift from reacting to responding, in how you begin to ask different questions, ones rooted not in blame, but in understanding. The chaos no longer defines you, it refines you. We're so used to seeking control, trying to manage outcomes, fix everything before it falls. But chaos teaches us surrender. It teaches us to let go of perfection and expectations, to allow what's real to reveal itself. You realize that certainty isn't peace. Truth is. And sometimes truth is messy, painful, and uncomfortable, but it's honest. And honesty is the foundation of clarity. There's a quiet strength in surviving what tried to undo you, in standing in the middle of the wreckage and saying, "I'm still here." You begin to trust yourself more. You stop chasing validation because you've seen what happens when you lose yourself trying to be accepted. You become your own anchor, not because it's easy, but because chaos forced you to find stability within. That's where true clarity lives. Not outside of you, but within. The people who remain after the storm, they're your mirror. The habits that survive, those are your roots. The values that emerge, they become your compass. You don't need to rebuild what broke. You're allowed to start again, wiser and more aware. You don't owe anyone your return to who you were before. That version of you served a purpose, but the storm introduced you to who you're becoming. Sometimes the greatest clarity comes when you have nothing left to prove, when your hands are no longer full of what wasn't meant to last, when you stop forcing and start allowing, when you begin to move from a place of alignment, not anxiety. You learn that peace is not found in the absence of chaos, but in the understanding that chaos always carries a message. It's not just destruction, it's transformation. It's the divine disruption that places you back on the path you were meant to walk. You are not the chaos. You are the clarity that rises from it. The you that emerges after the storm is stronger, sharper, and more honest. And that clarity, that's your power. There are moments in life when the silence feels too loud, when the phone doesn't ring, when the rooms you walk through echo with your own thoughts and no one else's voice. You find yourself sitting alone at tables once filled with conversation, watching the world move around you as if you're invisible to it. In those moments, loneliness creeps in like a shadow, whispering lies to your weary heart. You are forgotten. You are unwanted. You are abandoned. But the truth is far more sacred. Being alone does not mean you've been abandoned. We are conditioned to believe that worth is reflected in the company we keep, that a full calendar, a buzzing phone, and a room of admirers means we are loved. And yet, some of the loneliest souls live surrounded by people who do not see them. Being in a crowd does not guarantee connection. Being partnered does not promise intimacy. And being alone does not mean you lack love. Aloneness is a condition of space, not of spirit. It is an invitation, not a punishment. It calls you inward to places within yourself you've neglected while tending to the noise and needs of others. It offers you clarity, peace, and most of all, presence. When you are alone, you are given the rare chance to hear your own voice without interruption, to ask yourself what you need without the pressure of performance, to meet the parts of you that only silence can introduce. You are not less worthy when you are alone. You are not broken because others could not stay. Sometimes people leave not because you are unlovable, but because your growth created a distance they could not cross. Sometimes they go because the connection was seasonal, designed for a moment, not a lifetime. And sometimes the divine removes people from your path to make room for your becoming. Not every absence is abandonment. Some are alignments in disguise. Solitude is not the absence of love. It is the presence of self. In stillness, you come home to yourself. You begin to remember your own laughter, the softness of your breath, the rhythm of your thoughts. You no longer seek completion from others because you recognize that you are whole, even when no one is holding your hand. You stop waiting for someone to fill the spaces you were always meant to fill yourself. It is in being alone that you learn the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness aches, solitude heals. Loneliness longs for validation. Solitude rests in self-assurance. When you lean into solitude, you discover that the universe has not turned its back on you, it has turned you toward yourself. You realize that every so-called rejection was a redirection. Every silence was space being carved out for something deeper. You are never truly alone. Even in your quietest moments, something sacred is with you. Call it grace, call it intuition, call it divine love. It lingers around you, within you. It holds your trembling hands when no one else is there. It listens when you speak into the void. It knows your name, your pain, and your purpose. You have not been abandoned. You are being guided. Think of the times you tried to make something work that was never meant to last. Think of the rooms you stayed in too long just to avoid feeling alone. Think of how heavy your heart became carrying people who never saw the fullness of your light. You weren't alone then, but you were lonely. Now in your solitude, you are not weighed down. You are free. This is the season of return, not a return to someone else, but to you, to your voice, your softness, your fire. You are learning to stand tall without leaning on what cannot hold you. You are learning that your own presence is powerful, healing, and more than enough. Alone is not a punishment, it is preparation for deeper love, for truer connection, for peace that doesn't depend on performance. So if you find yourself alone, do not rush to fill the silence. Sit with it. Let it teach you. Let it show you the treasure that is your own company. Because when the time comes for others to join you on this journey, you'll know they're walking beside you, not to rescue you, but to walk with someone who has already learned how to carry themselves. Alone is not abandonment. Alone is the beginning of becoming. The journey through detachment, rejection, solitude, and inner knowing is not marked by loss, but by awakening. What once felt like endings, painful goodbyes, closed doors, sudden silence, were sacred beginnings in disguise. You were never forsaken. You were being refined. Each moment of chaos carved out clarity. Each rejection redirected you. Each goodbye opened the door for truth. And in the stillness of being alone, you returned to the most powerful truth of all. You were never without love because you were never without yourself. Trust the unfolding, trust the knowing within. Everything taken was replaced with something deeper, alignment, peace, and purpose. You are not breaking, you are becoming.